Hello and welcome back to Tiny Artist TV. Today we are doing technically the third, because the first one ended up being a two-parter, the third video in our Orctober costume series. So this is a series that I'm going to be doing throughout the month of October, where I'm going to be drawing characters in random costumes, and I'm going to be generating, like I mentioned, the costume, what type of costume it is, such as I've got this spooky list of adjectives here, and I'm also going to be randomly generating my color palette. I feel like the first video went very well. I was really pleased with the color palette combinations with the costumes. Like, they just kind of worked. I may not get as lucky with the next set, and honestly I hope that I get something that's a little more challenging, because that's how you grow. You have to challenge yourself. So let's go ahead and roll up our first costume. I have over here on my second screen my random number generator, which will tell me what costume, type of costume, and palette I will be creating. So the first video had 6 prompts. That's going to be the longest one. The rest of them are going to be about 3 or 4 chunked prompts. So let's see what we have for our first one. Number 10, a clown. Okay. And what kind of clown is he gonna be? Now 32. An alarming clown. Pretty sure that's not going to be too hard to do, considering that I know quite a few people who aren't very fond of clowns in the first place, but alarming, yeah, probably going to go with the Pennywise vibe there. And for the color palette, I'm going to do a number 1 through 33. I know last video I said 34. 33 was actually what I was generating. It's number 19 in column A, Arizona. Okay, so not very scary colors, but I mean, last week we had a pink farmer and he ended up actually being kind of terrifying. So maybe we could still make this work. And just like last week, I'm going to go ahead and roll the other 3 off camera, and then you guys can find out which ones I drew as I'm drawing them. Drew as in, you get it. I hope you get it. Let's start the video. So the first prompt here was alarming clown, and of course alarming can mean like something terrifying, something startling. I went a little more literal instead of going with what I had said was a Pennywise direction, because I thought this would be more fun. English is weird and puns are fun, so I went with basically a battle bard who is kind of like this alarming, like literally, like you see she's screaming, she's got this gong, this jester type character, and just had fun with it. So in the coloring, I guess in the sketch here, I've got this like Harlequin type pattern to kind of drive home the fact that she's supposed to be more of a court jester figure than just a traditional clown, but I do also give her some clown makeup, but it's not funny. It's a little more orcish, I guess, a little more like battle makeup, so it's appropriate for an orc who's dressing up in this alarming clown costume. And even though initially I thought this color palette was going to be kind of difficult to work with, at least I still had the neon like blue, and I had the orange and the greens, kind of like almost Scooby-Doo color palette. The last 3 all end up being pastel. With the technique that I use to draw these, working in pastel is really hard because the lines basically become invisible. So out of this particular batch, I'd say this was the easiest to color per se. However, as far as ideas and execution, I do feel like this one is the weakest one, so I'm glad it's first and we're getting it out of the way. I did still kind of enjoy drawing this one just because, again, instead of doing a scary type clown, I went a little more like on the nose and, you know, had fun with the words and made it alarming in the sense of volume instead of an abstract concept of fear. The last three, especially number three I feel is the best, and we'll get to that one later, obviously. But number two ended up being my favorite concept-wise because the color palette worked out surprisingly well. And the last one in the batch, number four, I actually kind of had a hard time working on that one, but I'll get to that later. It's not necessarily for the colors, it's for the concept itself. But now we are almost finished with our alarming clown. I'm just using the turquoise to do the shading because I feel like it would be the most dynamic out of those colors. So here is the alarming clown. And now we're moving on to number two. So concept number two, or I guess costume, whatever you want to call it, ended up being a cloudy cowboy. And when I first drew this, randomly generated this particular prompt, my first thought was, okay, this is going to be a dark, mysterious rider who's like riding in at like midnight, there's smoke everywhere, his horse is half dead or whatever. And then I generated the color palette. As I mentioned, the color palette is pastel. On my generator, this color palette, I have it listed as cotton candy. So, with the descriptor being cloudy, I kind of, like, that immediately changed the mood for this piece. And I was thinking, okay, more like soft, like Candyland. And he just ended up being like a really chill, like, I vibe with this cowboy. I love the way this turned out. Honestly, over the past few days of me working on this drawing and this video, it's kind of become a household meme. For some reason, my husband decided that this guy shows up with a pocket full of cashews. My headcanon is that this is someone, you're out in the desert and you're not quite sure if you actually encountered this particular character. He's just so calm and mysterious and gentle. He gives you what you need, sends you on your way, and then you're never quite sure if you're gonna see him again, but you like absolutely want to like grab a beer with this guy. So that's kind of the direction I went for my cloudy cowboy. Absolutely love him. I'm sitting here like beaming as I'm telling you guys about my thought process behind this character because he's just like, he's so adorable, he's so chill. I love it. I love it so much. So as I'm getting into the coloring, you can see what I mean about with pastels, doing my line art as an overlay versus a multiplier, just leaving it alone, how the lines just kind of disappear. I did do the lines in a dark green instead of a black because with black the lines will disappear. With white colors and black colors, these are of course closer to the white side of things, and so to push the line art back out, I do go in of course with some shadows. Instead of doing it on a separate layer, everything is just on the same layer, and I'm basically kind of tracing back over some of the little details. I decide not to do full shading like I do for some of the other ones because I just really love the way the soft colors play with each other in this particular concept, and everything is basically just color blocking, and that also helps with the overall cloudy feel of this piece. Number three ended up being the arrogant unicorn, which perfect adjective for this particular costume. I figured instead of being a full-blooded orc, this is probably a half-orc who's mixed with some elven Azmar blood, because canonically they tend to be a little, like, haughty and, like, oh, I'm so much better than you and I know it and you can't do anything about it. So, For this one, the pose was pretty easy to nail. The attitude, the like, not hand on hip, but the contrapposto, just kind of like, again, kind of a similar feeling to the Egyptian, where she's kind of like, ew, why are you in my presence? But instead of that attitude, it's more of a, oh, you must be so honored to be in my presence. So the color palette for this one, as you can see, is very Barbie-esque. On my color palette generator, I have it listed as strawberry ice cream just because that little bit of green gives it some like sherbety feels or whatever. This is irrelevant. But I basically did, of course, use up those 3 shades of pink, and then as you can see, I pulled a little bit darker from the darkest shade and just added a little more gray to it to make the belt and then also the skin tone, because I felt doing a pink orc wouldn't really work, especially with the effect that I want to do with the pants. The legs would just kind of disappear at that point. Overall, like I mentioned, I think during prompt 1, that I think this was the best executed out of this particular batch. I did this sketch off camera to save time, and then I still spent an hour doing the coloring. So it ended up being just as long as it would have been regardless. But there's a lot of small parts to this one, and I just wanted to really push that fabulous unicorn feel, so it took a lot of just kind of like small tweaks here and there. And again, overall, I'm very pleased with the way this turned out. She's fabulous and sassy, and arrogant unicorn definitely comes out in this one. Also, I would love to see someone attempt to cosplay this. So after adding plenty of glitter and sparkles and a last couple of finishing touches, here is our arrogant unicorn. Number 4. This is another one, the sketch I went ahead and did ahead of time just because I knew that this video was going to be another long one. This prompt was a grieving hippie. And honestly, it kind of hurts me to look at this one because he's just so sad. And I know it sounds stupid because I'm the one that drew it. I could change his face, but I really wanted to convey that feeling of loss and helplessness. So my idea was that this is not necessarily a costume. The costume decor is very 60s, 70s hippie with the tie-dye and the necklaces once I get into the coloring. But the idea behind this concept, this is a druid, a little orc druid, and very relevant to what's happening right now on the West Coast. He's watching his home just burn to the ground and is powerless to do anything about it. And as I was working on this, like, I had to kind of stop and take some breaks and like not look at his face for a while, because just, I mean, I guess kudos to me for being able to properly convey just absolute gut-wrenching grief and horror. But this one was definitely like, I could have gone a little more lighthearted with it. I actually did have another pose at first where he just kind of had his head down on his knees and he was just kind of looking like he's having a little pity party. But I found a similar pose in the Clip Studio Model Maker, and I just changed the arms to be up and out like he's wailing. And the face just came naturally, and I just felt that this was so much more dynamic and so much more dramatic. And, yeah. the most challenging part was being able to convey a serious feeling of grief with this particular color palette. And again, not to toot my own horn, but I think I did a pretty good job considering that this is basically like a honeydew melon sherbet color palette. But he's still, that face, it's the face. The face just sells it. So I'm adding some highlights to kind of give that sense of the glowing embers that are going on in front of him. And here is our Grieving Hippie. So that is the end of today's batch of characters. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys continue to enjoy this series. The next one is going to be days 11 through 14. So that's going to be going up on, I believe it's Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever the 14th is. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if you want to dress up as any of these characters for Halloween. That would be fun. But until next time, have a weird day.